Thank you for watching Mike's in the Garden, where it's my mission to inspire you to grow food. And I'm with one of my friends, Cory Endrulat, who's a big inspiration, not only to myself, but to many out there in permaculture. Cory, what's happening, brother?
Thank you. Nice to be here in person with you. I appreciate it.
I know, it's the first time meeting, so very cool to come to your place and see what you have here and also hear about what you're working on. But today I want to talk about Natural Intelligence, this book that you've written with our friend Jim Gale, who's out there inspiring as well. How about we start with, what is natural intelligence?
Well, when I mention natural intelligence, right, what is most people's reaction? I think people often hear about this word artificial intelligence, right? And this is the future. This is what's going to help humanity, right? People are already using ChatGPT. They're already looking up, oh, I want to find a recipe. I want to find this information. And so they're already becoming increasingly dependent on artificial intelligence. But what if there's an intelligence that has always existed beyond artificial intelligence, that actually created artificial intelligence, that actually permits it and allows it into being? In other words, limits it, because people fear, oh, artificial intelligence is going to take over humanity, right? There's robots and the Terminator, right? And so natural intelligence is our consciousness. It's our conscience. It's what we have within us, and it's also what we have throughout the natural world, right? What has always been here. It's the universal and timeless. And so permaculture is a demonstration of that intelligence, because we're using our brain, our conscience to care for the earth, right? People care, earth care, future care. And so we're using our conscience, our internal natural intelligence, for the external natural intelligence, which is nature as a whole, and working with those systems. So that way there's a balance, there's a harmony between the internal and the external, the masculine and the feminine. This, right, comprises of the whole brain. This is intelligence, right? You have the intellect and you got the emotion, that intuition, and together you have that intelligence. And when it's natural, it's because it's nourished, it's cared for. It's something that you're not telling someone what to think. You're not saying you have to think how I think, right? You have to be indoctrinated into this man-made system, into this artificial system. But no, that natural system that has always been there. Everybody has it. They simply have to find it and encourage it, right? Ask questions. And through the many arts, through the many ages, like poetry and painting, and like even just writing this book itself is a form of our intelligence being expressed. So everybody has it, and people use it. Some people suppress it, distract themselves, use technology, use AI. But we could use AI as instead a tool that actually helps our natural intelligence, right? So if we are working on a project, we recognize, oh, this is what we're using AI for, but I'm not going to become dependent on it. I'm not going to say I need it, and that's going to become my whole reality. And this book in particular is focused on permaculture, because when we are in touch with nature directly and we're growing food, we can solve a lot of the world's biggest problems, including AI, but not limited to it, right? Because AI is going to merge with a lot of these other systems, like the governments, like medicine, right? There's now like biomedicine that they put into your body. They call it bio-nano things. You can look this up, where they put like straight up robots inside your body that tracks, when you should have certain medications. It's going to become like your new doctor, right? And your doctor is not going to listen to your body anymore, or listen to perhaps your own feelings. It's going to listen to whatever the robot is saying, as they already perhaps do by looking at statistics and looking at the numbers and not treating you as a human being. So that is a big problem, because you're losing something so essential when you're not treating somebody like a human being anymore. And people are going to come to terms with that, because natural intelligence is beyond artificial. So it's going to crash down. People are going to realize, wait, I need to love one another. I need to have empathy. I need to have care. Because when you're surrounded in a world of technology and mass media and consumerism and materialism, you lose touch with yourself and your humanity and everything. And the governments of this world and the mass agriculture all contribute to that, because it's all about dependence and consumerism.
Wow. Well, very well put. That's why I asked you. I've read the book. I've followed your YouTube channel, listened to a lot of your videos. We're friends with Jim, so Jim's obviously a huge inspiration to a lot of people out there, myself included. And how is it that you and Jim came to write this book?
Yeah, Jim, Gale, and I told you it's like crazy synchronicity.
Yeah.
We were at this one event in Deltona, Florida, and there was not really much going on. And so him and I were sitting at a table, and I shared with him my other books, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you write like really cool books." And I was like thinking in the back of my head, man, I really want to do like a permaculture book or a book focused on like growing food and inspiring people to do so, because when we do, and everybody grows food instead of lawns, there's more lawn acreage than all the crops that we grow combined, we can have abundance everywhere, and we can defeat scarcity, which is one of the leading causes of war, right? Fear and scarcity, division. And so when we can utilize such a practical, abundant strategy, it just seems so evident, like we need to spread that on a mass scale. How are we going to do that? So Jim is doing all these videos, he's doing all this outreach, but he doesn't have a book. And I know how to write books. So I was like, Jim, he came to me with the idea like, hey, why don't we write a book? I was like, Jim, I was thinking the same exact thing. So we wrote this book together just by writing some notes in the beginning, and then corresponding with each other back and forth, and then inviting different collaborators. Like we have McKinley Halati, Kevin Fretz, Joel Salatin, Pat Miltich, Rowdy Mayer, and Marjorie Wildcraft. These guys all have different expertise in different fields. Marjorie and Joel are actually best-selling authors, so it's great to have them a part of the project. But each one of these guys has unique expertise. They all have amazing experiences too. We include that all within the book, and I have a lot of references to their work. If you want to learn more, it's like a primer. It's something that gets people inspired to want to start the whole process, because even I wasn't into gardening at first, even though my message was nature is the answer. I was like, oh, gardening is gardening. It's hard work. It's farming. But I didn't know about permaculture. I didn't know that we can grow abundance, and I didn't know, until I went to Jim Gale's place, what it looked like. I was like, whoa, and people are here for tourism, and there's Airbnbs, and he's got all these it was just an amazing system. It was so radically different, and it opens people's minds too. Like there was even people who were coming to Galt's who had no clue what the place was, and they were just like, what is this? So I noticed that intelligence, that spark of spirit that we call it in the book, just opens up in people when they are exposed to something that they never heard before, and something that they thought was previously impossible. But instead, it is possible, right? What you can conceive and believe, you can achieve, right? Is one of the quotes we have in the book.
Yep.
And, Jim often uses these quotes too. So we use these quotes as sort of the guiding statements for each chapter, and then we break it down, like the Martin Luther King Jr. quote, right? Which is, those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war. Well, if we are going to defeat tyranny and scarcity and all the problems that have existed, some of them for many thousands of years, we now have technology, we now have information at our fingertips. Are we going to use it? And we can learn from those people of the past who have implemented different strategies, like nonviolent resistance, civil disobedience. How many people out there are voting or participating in the government systems, not considering the fact that throughout history, one of the most powerful strategies for change is civil disobedience, and simply saying no, and then acting directly on principles. Well, what does it mean to act on principles? Maybe you're tapping into that natural intelligence throughout the world. You're saying, this is what's true. This is God. This is nature. This is, right. And I'm not going to stand with wrong. I'm not going to suppress my conscience. I'm not going to just do what I'm told. I'm going to learn and think it through and act consciously. I'm not just going to toil the land and destroy everything and mass agricultural crop everything like we are doing for soybean and corn and all the stuff that people are finding out is harming us as well, and harming the environment and harming everybody. We're going to instead consciously and intelligently work with nature to create an ecosystem that supports each other and everything within the environment. So let's do that for everything in our life, and then, that sounds like intelligence to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It is pretty amazing to go to a place like Galt's, a demonstration site, and like your house and my house and other places that are popping up around the world, and even just here in Florida, ones that we've been to. It's contagious, and I'm working to put gardens in at my neighbors' houses and hopefully encourage and inspire them to actually go out and maintain it, even though the idea behind permaculture is kind of set it and forget it for a portion. But one of the biggest takeaways I had from this book was we always, for the most part, people focus on the problem and not the solution.
Right.
And this book is primarily talking about solutions. It says it right on the side here, the solution. Can you get into some of the solutions that are in this book?
Yes, so I mentioned permaculture, and then of course civil disobedience is more along the lines of voluntarism. I would say the two main themes in this book that are detailed are permaculture and voluntarism. These two ideas which most people have never heard of before. So those are like the overarching, you can say, solutions or ideas that lead to solutions. But within those, are many other solutions. So right, like within voluntarism, there's civil disobedience. Within permaculture, there might be aquaculture or other forms of gardening, and then specific plants, and then the further and further you go, maybe certain methods. And you can go as deep as you want, right? We have references, so you can say, hey, if I want to learn more about compost tea as a solution, for growing food, and maybe instead of spraying all the chemicals that we do in all our lawns, we can instead spray compost tea. And simply set up a composter with the stuff we already consume, just by taking the scraps of different plants and different fruits and vegetables, and just saying, hey, I'm going to put it in this bin, and I'm going to use it as fertilizer. Very simple, and people have been doing it for thousands of years. We've kind of lost touch with that, right? So that's wisdom that we have to bring back. That's a solution, right? And that's within permaculture. And then, voluntarism. It's recognizing your conscience and encouraging that. So let's say you have kids, right? How are they being schooled? Right? Like, are they going to their own private school? Are they going to a public school? But most importantly, are you helping the kid, form a bond with them because they are your kid, and encouraging them to learn for themselves, to think for themselves, to practice self-ownership, because without that, they're going to be manipulated by others. They're going to be bullied, right? They're not going to have a sense of principles to stand on, to say, this is the boundary that I'm not willing to cross. If somebody, makes me a victim, I'm not going to play the victim. I'm also not going to try to say I'm the egoic, confident person that's going to, because a lot of people take on that role, and a lot of people are missing a mother and a father-like figure within their life, and so there's a lot of projection that happens in society. Well, when you understand this from a holistic, big picture point of view, that's intelligence, right? So that's a strategy, is learning how do we unschool our kids. And, Dana Martin calls it radical unschooling. I interviewed her too. I mentioned her in the book. David Rodriguez, right? He has the Valor Academy, and how you can get your kids out of, these different schooling systems and bring them to voluntary schooling systems, right? Voluntarism is all about everything voluntary. So those are powerful solutions, because not only does your child get a better education, but it teaches them to not obey authority figures that are going to coerce them and put them and turn them into a violent beast, essentially. I mean, you look at the Stanley Milgram experiments or the Stanford prison experiments, and you see how the average person is willing to hurt their fellow man. And they don't realize that they're doing it. They're completely unconscious of it, because they have these superstitions and beliefs they never knew they had within themselves, because the schooling system did it to them. And they were too young to know. And so we're born into these different systems, and we take them for granted, not realizing there are systems that are beyond them that have always existed. And so, that's what we're encouraging in the individuals. Is the solution then must be something I have to say, or is it a solution that you already know, and you simply have to unveil the darkness and unveil all those layers of deceptions to find the truth? I think it's less of a process of me telling you what to do and what strategies and ideas are out there, and more of a process of delineation, trying to find out, what have I known but just kept hidden or suppressed, and I don't want to face because I fear it, and I feel like I can never truly embrace reality. I think that's perhaps the real solution at play.
Yeah. Let's talk about intentions. Because I hear Jim talk about this a lot. I hear you talk about this a lot. Something I'm working on, trying to write down my goals, things I want to accomplish, but also being present and focusing on, what my intentions are today as well as for the future. Is that something you can expand on?
Yes, my intentions are to encourage the individual to simply see their own value and potential, right? If that's what you're asking in particular, my intentions. But, what are your intentions? What do you plan to do with this information? I created this not so you can consume it and simply, be a reader, or somebody who follows my content or your content, right? I'm pretty sure you can say the same thing, right? We do it because we want other people to also to do it and to be
Right.
the example and to change the world with us. So, with Jim, I told you we don't really talk about money with each other. We're focused on how do we change the world. And that's what I love about Jim. Like him and I, we just bonded immediately. He was so easy to work with because we would just correspond with each other and work from where we are good at. Like I'm good at media and creating different stuff that he's not necessarily used to, but he's good at speaking, and so he sent me a lot of voice messages and I would have to like transcript it. I'd go through his interviews, I'd transcript everything, and I'd bring it all together. But we each have different talents and abilities, and we have to bring that to the table. And so I encourage everybody out there to also do the same thing. My intention is to simply do good for this world, and as much as I can. And so I'm always learning, for that to happen. You have to constantly try to improve on yourself and be conscious. The moment you say, this is the truth, I am right, and I've got it figured out, is the moment where you lost it.
Right. Yeah, I guess I could have framed that differently, but
No, it is.
no, to me, I see a lot of people kind of going through life with no intentions and
Yes.
not understanding, certainly after 4 years of COVID and now, one political party's flipped to another political party. We see a lot of mental breakdowns in society.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is people, they don't know what their intentions are. And they haven't sat down and thought about, everyone's caught up on social media.
Yep.
And they're focused on likes or stories or commenting and getting themselves all riled up instead of, like Jim says, just being in the present,
Being present,
and
yes.
thinking of what are my intentions and how can I help myself, my family, my neighbors, my community. And
Absolutely.
I think that's something that needs to be talked about more, and something I'm going to talk about more to myself, my spouse, and my friends. So
If it wasn't for presence, I couldn't write the book, right? And really sit with myself on the information and say, what could I do? And how, receiving wisdom from the universe is the same way. To sit back and reflect. I mean, you can learn a lot from a single tree or a single plant. Many people would just pass that off and say there's no wisdom in that. But it's like an amazing system the more you study it. And you don't necessarily need a microscope to figure it out. Our ancients figured it out without technology, right? So how did they do it? They just sat there and reflected. And they didn't have social media, they didn't have AI to do it.
Right.
So I think it's an amazing thing. Presence is the key, absolutely. In order for anybody to listen to this right now and to comprehend what we're saying, there needs to be pauses, silences between the words of which I speak. And it's all that yin that conceives and brings life to the yang. So everybody talks about the light and the masculine and being strong and all the very strength-based elements of our society. Who's a strong leader? Who says what we want to say? But they're not considering that feminine, more intuitive yin side of things, which actually conceives everything in this world. And so that requires presence, right? Like, again, if you cannot recognize the pauses between the words, you wouldn't understand what I'm saying. If there was no empty space in this room, we would not be able to use the room. The usefulness in everything lives in the uselessness, in the emptiness of everything. It's quite an ironic world, which is why we also include quotes from the Tao Te Ching, which emphasizes this more of this motherly energy, very different from a lot of other ancient texts, just for people to become aware of it, especially in the West, where a lot of people have not heard of that. And it's a very freedom-oriented philosophy that often encourages and even says that if people followed the Tao, which is referred to as the way of nature, there'd be no need of rulers. Because perhaps people are the rulers of themselves. People are following the way or the truth or the natural authority or God, instead of these man-made powers that they presume, right? And they can take charge of their own life and their own health in so many different ways. And just by starting to take that difference, you start noticing yourself opening up to more people who are also are on the same wavelength, and you start creating in a community, and I'm getting together with people and I'm doing events, and it's an amazing thing to see. At first you might think, oh, I'm alone and I'm the only person who may understand this or know some of these things or I'm curious about this, but you're never alone. There's always a bunch of people who are in the same exact position that you are in. And just be present. Let all the worries escape for a moment. Let all the conditioning, decompress from your mind just for a moment and ask yourself, how does it feel to be present?
Very good. Let's talk about your outreach series that you're working on with Jim, targeting influencers. And if anyone's watching this right now, what message would you say to them to help you target some influencers? Because this is an important message that
Yes.
we need.
Absolutely.
We need these influencers to get this message out there at scale.
We do. Yes. So the strategy we lay out in the book, and we have it really laid out too, even a summary page in the back here. So it's like the start, right, is we go through all these different quotes. We ask ourselves, what is the idea? Was he wrong when Napoleon Hill said, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, right? Was he wrong? And Bill Mollison says, though the problems of the world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. Well, what are the embarrassingly simple solutions? Right, Buckminster Fuller, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Right, so we ask ourselves these questions. How do we organize? How do we know that we are free? Who am I? Know thyself, right, the most important philosophical lesson. And what do we truly serve? Are we serving nature? Are we serving truth? Once we create awareness around this solution, which is permaculture and voluntarism, the idea of do not suppress your conscience, right? Very simple. Always do what is right, and let's grow food, not lawns, right? Let's eliminate the poisons like we know Roundup, billion-dollar lawsuits, yet still on the shelves at Home Depot and all these places. So why can't an influencer like Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson or any of these guys just say, or even call up their friends and say, we're going to say this on a mass scale, not to buy this product. Let's boycott them. Let's not have this in the stores anymore, and create awareness around it. Just by creating awareness alone, that's massive, right? That would do a lot of organization with people. That would bring a lot of people onto new ideas simply by that mere messaging. And you're not going to hear it through a lot of mainstream channels because you look at the advertisers for different TV shows and stuff, you see it's all pharma companies, right? It's all agribusinesses, and they're all connected to the government system. So we have to create that new system. We have to show it in action, and it's going to be the influencers who likely do that. The influencers who are not necessarily, bought and paid for and in that system, but the influencers who are genuinely curious and want to make a good difference in this world. And there's a lot of them, right? There's tons of people on YouTube, on different platforms who just have an audience that is open to sharing different ideas. People like Alex O'Connor, just random names just popped in my head. Like, he's an atheist YouTuber, or not even an atheist. He kind of just asks questions about religion and all sorts of things, but he's willing to question everything. So somebody like him never talks about permaculture or any of these ideas. Doesn't matter. It would definitely, I think, intrigue him to look into it, because we're talking about the most dangerous religion, the most dangerous superstition, which is statism, and
Right.
as opposed to voluntarism. And we're talking about how do we solve the problems that he's often talking about. Like, he's talking about religion. Well, how does that correlate? Well, religion throughout history has been very bloody, right? People have been fighting over this for many thousands of years, and people still have these superstitions, and maybe they're healing, so they go to these religions to heal. Well, let's get down to the roots of it. Maybe, there is scarcity. Maybe people can't have enough nutrition in their lives. Maybe, the environment is being polluted. And so many things that are causing people to be divided and to fall to these different belief systems. So I guarantee you, any content creator who does anything for truth in one way or another can find some sort of sympathy with this message of like, grow food, not lawns. Who can disagree, about feeding the world and creating abundance? I don't meet anybody who says, yeah, that's wrong, we shouldn't have that. I mean, I think everybody wants healthy food. So if we can all agree on it, why don't we stand on it and say, this is what we need to do? Right? Even if you don't necessarily agree on the voluntarism part, because it's a bit more harder to understand, because it deals with psychology and your conscience, even though I think everybody should always do what is right to them. permaculture, I mean, just the simple idea of growing food, you can't live without it. We'd have no life on Earth if everything was death. And we need to have life around us. So we're finding out, people are talking about climate change, they're talking about pollution the next day, they're talking about mass extinction and starvation, and then the food insecurity rates, like 98% in America when COVID happened and the shelves were empty and everybody's going to get, like paper towels and toilet paper when there's something called the toilet paper plant that grows here in Florida. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like they don't know about it. It can grow abundantly. You just put it in the soil. It's a native. It's like incredible, right? So it says here, the path. Number 1, create awareness. Permaculture and voluntarism. Grow food, not lawns, right? Make it trendy. Maybe make it a hashtag. Make it a message that we share. And then number 2, influencers organize. They show it by example, and they do shout outs. Maybe at the end of every show they do, they say, hey, let's come together, let's grow some food, let's get together with your neighbors, give them this pamphlet. We made a 1-page document. You can go to nita.one, and you'll see we lay it out, the solution, on a 1-pager. So if you don't want to buy the book, you don't have to, right? We have it in so many different formats, even in the language of these different influencers, for what they can do and how they can say it. So you can see, hey, this is what Joe Rogan is saying, how we have to transform our lawns and turn them into food-producing powerhouses. And everybody, if they simply replace their lawns with some sort of food, we can barter with each other, we have the local economy back, everything just reboots. Because our whole nation was founded on agriculture. All the world has been founded on agriculture. You go back to the very beginning of government and you see this mass agriculture starting to happen, and that's when you start to see the reduction of nutrition. So it's not a coincidence. But if we want to return to our roots and really get nutritious, food in our lives, we use permaculture. We can apply it to everything. It's an ethics-based system. It's not just growing food. And so number 3, after we create awareness and organize, we call out and invite the corporations which are selling poisons to sell life instead of death. We turn the problems into the solutions. Right, so all these problems, all these companies, Monsanto, Bayer, BASF, Syngenta, you can just go down the list. And people say, these are the evil people, we should not. Well, let's invite them. Let's invite them to be part of the solution. What if it's more profitable to do good? If we ever think about that, look at Kevin Fretz and what he's doing in the organics industry. He's proving that it's more profitable to do good because you're getting more yield out of caring for the soil and caring for the earth, and simply plug and play. If you do it correctly, you have like the right system set up. That's what Jim Gale and his design systems and the people in the permaculture movement are doing. It's like you just press a button and it's done, right? Making it super simple for people. Even though behind it, there's all this intelligence and complexity. That's what we can do. We can use AI as the greatest tool, as the greatest benefit for humanity, or it could be the greatest downside. It's our choice. It's what we choose to do with the tools. We don't want to become the tools of our tools.
Right. One small act multiplied many times. And that's, excuse me. Yeah, a lot of great points there. Cory, why don't you tell people where they can get the book and follow you and more of what you got going on?
Thank you. I appreciate it. So nita.one, you'll find all the information there, different documents, right? So that stands for Nature is the Answer, nita.one. And you'll see, there's different links there as well. And of course, that's a website I created a couple years back too, as like a movement to simply say like nature is the answer, and to share the ideas around nature and natural laws and their concept people talk about. Right. But again, I think this is so unifying, and it's needed in a time such as now. And as the prices increase in the store and as people are frantic and looking for solutions, this is something that's right in front of us, our lawns, and it can transform everything. So definitely look into it if you haven't looked into it already. It's something that definitely inspired me, meeting Jim and meeting all these other people. I think it'll inspire you too. So thank you very much for having me on. My channel, if you're interested, is Cory Nature is the Answer on every platform pretty much. And I do like interviews, documentaries, all sorts of different things. And I really appreciate your work because like I told you, it's like amazing. I look at a lot of people's works and you definitely put like the time and energy into editing, and the shorts are very important for getting the word out, and your food forest looks great.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, my brother. Make sure you go follow and subscribe to my friend Cory and his channel, and check out Nature is the Answer, as well as Natural Intelligence. And like you said, if the book's too much, you can go to the website, download some information, or even just watch some of Cory's videos and you will get a wealth of information on there as well. So awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.